Hi there, and welcome to The Daily Gardener, an almanac of garden history, literature, and small botanical joys. I'm Jennifer Ebling, and today is March 9th. Some gardens greet you in the front yard. Some have a gate you can see from the street. Some can be viewed from kitchens or patios or porches. But the gardens that change us most are often harder to see. They live a little hidden or in unnoticed spaces, underfoot, in borrowed land, in places built quietly as acts of survival, curiosity, or hope. Today's stories are about those kinds of gardens made not just for beauty, but for resilience. Here's today's garden history. It was on this day in 1892 that the English writer Vita Sackville-West was born. Vita did not inherit the estate she loved. Knole, the ancestral home she believed was hers by right, passed instead to a male heir. Knole wasn't just a house. It was her childhood. Rooms she knew by heart. Trees she expected to grow old with. So Vita did what gardeners so often do when something beloved is taken away. She built another world. At Sissinghurst Castle, Vita and her husband, Harold Nicholson, created something quietly radical, a garden divided into rooms. Walls, hedges, thresholds. Harold supplied the bones, straight lines, strong geometry. Vita filled them with life. Vita believed in abundance, in letting plants crowd and spill. She once described herself with a grin as a muddler in the garden, someone willing to try things simply to see what might happen. Vita's instruction was simple and famously unapologetic. Cram, 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 every chink and cranny. Vita's most enduring creation is the White Garden, a space built entirely of white flowers and silver foliage, not designed for midday, but for dusk. It wasn't only about color. It was about timing, about the hour when other people have gone home, and only the faithful remain. Vita once wrote, "We owned a garden on a hill. We planted rose and daffodil, flowers that English poets sing, and hoped for glory in the spring." For years, Vita wrote a weekly gardening column for The Observer, speaking not as an expert, but as a muddler, someone who learned by doing and by getting it wrong. Vita taught gardeners that structure and romance are not opposites, that discipline can hold wildness, and that a garden, like a life, doesn't need permission to be beautiful. And it was on this day, in 1923, that the American botanist Lafayette Frederick was born. Lafayette spent much of his life studying the part of the garden most people never see. He was a botanist, a plant pathologist, and one of the world's leading authorities on Myxomycetes, better known as slime molds. Slime molds aren't plants. They aren't fungi. There's something in between. Organisms that move slowly, feed quietly, and recycle what's finished so something else can begin again. Gardeners often mistake them for trouble, but Lafayette taught us otherwise. They are decomposers, soil knitters, nutrient movers, part of the hidden system that keeps gardens alive. Lafayette learned plants first, not from textbooks, but from his father, a tenant farmer in Mississippi. His father taught him to identify trees by their bark, their fruit, and by the sticky gum-like sap of sweet gum trees, which they would chew as they walked. Sometimes it came from watching what survived when the heat stayed too long. At 16, Lafayette entered Tuskegee University, where he studied during the final years of George Washington Carver's life. As a scientist and educator, Lafayette became something just as important as a researcher. He became a bridge. In 1958, he helped integrate the Association of Southeastern Biologists, opening professional doors that had long been closed to Black scientists. He went on to build botany programs, mentor generations of students, and insist that the garden of science be open to everyone willing to tend it. A species of Hawaiian shrub, Sertandra fredericii, is named in Lafayette Frederick's honor. Lafayette Frederick reminds us that the health of every garden depends on invisible labor, and that inclusion, like soil, must be cultivated on purpose. In today's Unearthed Words, we hear an excerpt from a poem by Berton Braley, published in the Science Newsletter on this day in 1929. Here's a little excerpt from his very long poem called Botany. There should be no monotony in studying your botany. It helps to train and spur the brain, unless you haven't got any. It teaches you, does botany, to know the plants and spotany, and learn just why they live or die, in case you plant or potany. Your time, if you'll allot any, will teach you how and what any old plant or tree can do or be, and that's the use of botany. Berton's poem reminds us that botany was never meant to be joyless. Even the charts, even the Latin names. Learning plants has always carried a little laughter alongside the work. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Women Gardeners by Yvonne Cuthbertson. This book is part of Women Gardeners Week on the Daily Gardener. This week's book recommendations celebrate women who shaped gardens, garden writing, and horticultural history, often without recognition. This is a book about women who gardened where they were allowed to stand, on borrowed land, kitchen plots, schoolyards, estates they would never inherit. It's about making beauty anyway, about tending something that might not last, but tending it faithfully all the same. And it's the long history Vita Sackville-West knew she belonged to, even when the gates were closed. And finally, here's something sweet to ignite the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day in 1902 that the American actor Will Geer was born. Most people remember him as Grandpa Walton on The Waltons. But before and during that fame, Will Geer was a botanist. When Hollywood blacklisted him during the McCarthy era, he turned to the land. In Topanga Canyon, California, Will built the Theatricum Botanicum, a living theater where Shakespeare was performed among the plants named in his plays. Will grew vegetables instead of lawns. He sold produce to survive, and he fed other blacklisted artists. On the set of The Waltons, Will insisted that the backlot garden be filled with real edible plants, snacking on them between takes, teaching young actors their botanical names. Will believed gardens should feed people, body and spirit. Will was also a lifelong activist and a friend to folk singers like Woody Guthrie and Pete Seeger. When he died in 1978, Will's family recited Robert Frost's poems and sang folk songs at his bedside. Will's ashes were buried in the Shakespeare garden he planted, a reminder that some lives take root exactly where they are needed. As we close the show today, remember to notice what lives quietly beneath the surface. Vita showed us how beauty can be shaped with intention. Lafayette taught us to honor the unseen labor that sustains every garden. And Will Geer reminded us that when the world closes its doors, the soil is still willing to receive us. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day.